Final hour of the program, and as we do every single Thursday at this time, we talk with Wyoming Liberty Group. My name is Glenn Woods, and if you have any questions during the course of this discussion, phone number is 307-363-4093, and Jason Gay is joining us from Wyoming Liberty Group today, which is another guy I don't think I've talked to yet down there. I think I've been down there a couple of times. Don't think I met you. Are you new with the group?
Yes, sir. I'm relatively new, so we haven't.
Check your microphone there. Your lips are moving, but I can't hear you. You might see an icon, and I'm going to check it on my end to see over here.
All right.
There's muted, and no.
Is it working now?
Just go ahead and back out and try to reset, because I see your lips moving, but I don't hear anything. So
Okay.
I say just go ahead and shut it off and hit the reset thing, and I'll be able to hear from you from Wyoming Liberty Group. And what Jason's going to talk about is the telecommunications industry lobbying for more money here, and I would bet in the state of Wyoming is what he's talking about. There we go. Okay, they're back. For those watching on video, they're backing out right now, and they're going to pop back in just a moment. And part of this, I'm going to bet part of what he has to talk about is when the telecommunications industry, and this could be internet, television, whatever, I mean, it could be cell phones, they want to get into more rural areas, but they don't have the money to get into rural areas because there's nobody there to buy a service. So usually what they do is they get government to pay for the service through subsidies. So you end up, in other words, paying for people who live way out in the middle of nowhere because there's not enough money out there to bring the service to them directly. Now, my thought is, I know it's inconvenient. I understand it's inconvenient if you drive way out into the middle of nowhere and there's no cell phone service. If you live out there, well, that's your problem because you're the person who moved out there. I certainly wouldn't subsidize something like this. But I think that's exactly, well, that is exactly what's been happening. And it didn't just start with telecommunications. What do you think public radio is about in part? But also this was the railroad industry did this. Many industries find a way to make money through the federal government, through taxpayers, to get into areas that normally they would never be able to break into because, frankly, it's too rural and the money just is simply not out there to support the industry. So if we can't get it through legitimate business means, well, then okay. Instead, what we'll do is we'll get the federal government to subsidize it. Okay, now I see him coming up again. Turn the camera over there. Okay, is your microphone on now? Give it a try.
Let's give it a shot this time.
There you go. I can hear you just fine now. Jason Gray is on the line with me, so I was talking about what I think you're going to be talking about. This is subsidies for the telecommunications industry, and I liken this not just to, well, cell phones for one, but internet, maybe cable TV, things like that. Am I on the right track here?
Yeah, you know, there's been subsidies for quite some time in the telecommunications industry. Starting in 1996, we established the Universal Service Fund federally, and all the states also kind of did the same thing. Many of them, Wyoming, for instance, starting in 1995. And the idea initially was that there are certain areas of the country that just aren't going to be serviced by the telecommunications company because it's not worth the money for them to run telephone lines out to a town of 10, 20 people. So they established the Universal Service Fund with the idea of getting telecommunications out to those folks because by 1996 we started to see telephone as a basic service that sort of everyone needs, like heat in the cold parts of the country.
Well, now correct me if I'm wrong here, because I've always heard the argument from those people who want to subsidize this, and normally it's people who are in the industries because they see a chance to make some more money here over an area they would never make money off of. But the politicians will come to us and say, but it's not fair. These poor people who live way out in the middle of nowhere, they don't have these basic services, and these services are a right, aren't they? Am I on the right track?
Yeah, well, that's exactly what happened. And the original Telecommunications Act in 1934 didn't address any kind of basic need for the service. But by '96, they had started to make that argument, and they've gone ahead and established this fund. And as you can imagine, we're going to reach a point eventually where telephone lines have been run to basically anywhere that there's more than two people living. I mean, it's just a fact that eventually you're going to reach that point. And around 2005, one of the things that we started to realize in our government was, well, people don't use the landlines as much as they used to. So instead of determining that maybe the Universal Service Fund wasn't needed because people don't use the landline phones anymore, it grew to mobile phones. And starting in 2005, that's when they started giving out mobile phones through the Lifeline program, which became known as Obamacare, or Obama phones recently. They started handing out the phones to people, which are prepaid phones, and they get so many minutes per month. And that program expanded from approximately 800 million in 2008 to it's over 2.2 billion now.
How do you handle the argument that all they're trying to do is help those people who are less fortunate in these poor rural communities?
Well, one of the great examples was a lady named Jillian from National Review. She went out to, she's in New York City, an area that doesn't have any problems with connectivity whatsoever, and she went out to a couple of these places where you go to sign up for welfare or anything like that, and of course the telecommunication companies have folks standing right outside ready to sign you up for your free phone. All you got to do is go up and go up and fill out the paperwork. And she didn't even lie about her income. She didn't state that she was eligible for welfare. She didn't make up anything. And despite the fact that she wasn't eligible for any kind of benefits, she was able to sign up for and receive 3 phones, even though you're legally only supposed to receive 1 phone. And she only signed up at 2 places. At one of the 2 places, there was actually 2 competitive cell phone companies standing there, and they signed her up one right after the other, seeing each other sign her up.
Okay, now I got to ask you, is this simply just the federal government that's coming in and doing this, or are they also lobbying states like the state of Wyoming and trying to get money out of the state?
Exactly. So like I said, in '95, the state of Wyoming set up its Universal Service Fund, and pretty much every state has one. And so now that the federal government has morphed into cellular phones, another thing that happened is in 2011, the federal government moved on to what they call broadband, what most people would call high-speed internet service. And the FCC is wanting to expand this Universal Service Fund, which they've now called the Connect America Fund, and they want to expand it so that they can make sure that the poor people also receive the internet service, which is now viewed as a basic human need. They need it in order to get a job, and there's all these different reasons why you would have to have high speed, not dial-up, mind you, high speed internet service. It's just a basic human need now, according to the FCC. And of course, go ahead.
Well, what I like to throw out to people is, well, a basic human need. You're the one who chose to continue living way out in the middle of nowhere.
Right.
If your internet is not fast enough, you could always choose to move closer.
Right. They also have available to them in rural areas. You have available satellite internet service, which isn't the fastest, and it is limited in terms of the amount of data they can get per month, and it's a little bit more expensive, but it is available to them. But one of the interesting things with the way the FCC did this is the FCC doesn't regulate the internet. As you know, they don't regulate your show if it's broadcast over the internet. The FCC doesn't have that regulation, or that authority from the federal government. So in order to get there, the FCC determined that because internet protocol like VoIP phones, Vonage, that type of thing, because these type of services, or the telecommunications services like the service we're using right now to talk to you, because these exist, the broadband internet is essentially a form of telecommunications. It's no longer an information service. It's a form of telecommunications just like your phone, and so they're going to go ahead and start regulating it.
Well, what gets me is when I drive out into rural communities, and if you've driven across Wyoming, you get out into the middle of nowhere and you see a bunch of trailers out there, and you think to yourself, what are you doing here? But there's a bunch of trailers out in the middle of nowhere, and if you look around, every one of them has a satellite dish on the roof, and guess what? That's not just television. They can get internet through that too. Is that subsidized?
Not yet, but the plan is to make it subsidized.
Yeah. Okay.
But what's even better than that is that Wyomingites won't really just be making sure that we're able to reach the folks out in rural Wyoming. They'll be subsidizing folks in, say, New York City that they don't have a lot of reported income because what they do isn't exactly on the up and up. Dealing drugs downtown is not really a thing you file on your 1040. So their taxable income is pretty low. They qualify for welfare. They've got the EBT card. Their girlfriend's got the WIC card, the WIC checks. And then they're going to go ahead and sign up for free high-speed internet at their apartment that you and I will pay for through fees that we pay for in our service contracts.
Well, okay, that's what I was going. This is where we have to kind of wrap this up for time's sake. But okay, so I know we're paying this through the fees. Like if I have a cell phone, I'm paying in fact for somebody else's cell phone.
Right.
So if I have cable TV, I may be paying for somebody else's cable TV, whatever the case may be. But are we also paying through not just federal taxes, but Wyoming taxes?
Yes. So when you look at your phone bill, or whether you're in South Dakota, Wyoming, wherever, when you look at your phone bill, you'll see state and federal fees, and those are all being collected for those purposes.
Okay. At some point we're going to have to come back and talk a little bit more about this, but I know we have one more guest from Wyoming Liberty Group coming up in just a few minutes. Jason, good to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Lynn.